Harwich Affordable Housing Trust meeting for September 25th, 2023. This is not our normal meeting. This is a special meeting. I want to discuss two items. One is the draft RFP that Laura Schofield's been working on, and applications for CPC funds. What I'd like to do with your consensus right now is I'd like to call the fire department up, because they're just going to make a very short presentation, and the other two will be longer. And I'm sure they would love to sit through our whole meeting, but
There's nothing you like better than a long meeting, right? Thanks,
but
Mark.
they've come to us with an opportunity to for some housing above the fire station, and
Thank you.
looking forward. Sitting in a hole.
Good afternoon. I'm Bruce Young. I'm the president of the Harwich Fire Association, and this is Chief North Clark, retired from the Harwich Fire Department. And thanks for having us come and just do a small presentation on what we got going on at 203 Bank Street. We have gone through planning for a special permit for 3 apartments on the second floor of the old firehouse with historical and event space as another special permit for the first floor, and a special permit for parking with the Harwich Conservation Trust for the property surrounding the building. What we're looking for is funding. We're here for money. That's the reason why we're here, to help us get started on the 3 apartments on the second floor. Initial estimates that we have gotten in so far, nothing is cheap anymore. Plumbing's $187,000, insulation's $88,000, septic's $80,000. I don't have an estimate on electrical yet, and I just divided that into 4, so we're at $100,000 right now just in the rough plumbing and electrical and septic and insulation. I divided that by 4, for the 4 separate apartments, 4 separate spaces there, so just a ballpark there on that. I also did the one apartment on the second floor, about 450 square feet. I did that at just a small market price of $300 a square foot. That's $135,000. I would think that is going to cost us somewhere around $150,000 per apartment on the second floor. So I think that's where we'd like to be, at $150,000 from the Housing Trust, if we could, go through the application process and to see if we can't get some funds.
Okay. Thank you. Again, I do appreciate, we're always looking for housing. This is an opportunity to add some affordable housing. And as I mentioned on the side, when I was a selectman, I had initially some concerns about the firehouse restoration, because I was always looking for housing. So I said privately and public, I very much appreciate that was incorporated into the design, some housing. There are 2 items that Bruce and I talked over the phone about, and I've also brought back to Joe and Megan in town is one, as you remember, well, I shouldn't say that because I don't remember. It's been like 2 meetings, 2 meetings ago, with Pine Oaks 4 came before us. We voted to develop a formal process for application of funds. I asked Joe last week if he would follow up and see where, and I don't know, Brianna, you have more on that or not, but do we have a process in place?
I reached out to Jen. I haven't heard back, but we're working on it. So we should have something soon. I would assume soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. That's one issue I'd like to get resolved, so we're doing it properly, making the application to us. The second issue that I've asked for clarification, and I think, Brendan, I mentioned this casually to you, and you mentioned if we have 3 apartments, one's affordable and 2 are market rate, how do we deal with that? Can we put a trust on one that's in the same, restriction on one that's in the same building and the other 2? And I've asked that same question to Joe and Megan, if they'd follow up and see what our requirements are. Because I'd like to get those 2 issues settled, because they're in a hurry to move. They moved surprisingly fast, and that's even with people stealing stuff from site, I think. So, but you guys have really done fantastic work. What my hope is, and I think our next meeting is October 23rd. I'm hoping that we'll be set on that agenda to come forward with the official application for your request, that we can deal with it then. And we'll also have the deed restriction issue, information on that. So we have everything in order that we can move quickly if we approve of it, if we as a committee approve of it.
We, Larry, we listened to your words back when we first had this vision, and the apartments and housing wasn't, we had to kind of rethink what we were gonna do with the building, and we did listen. So we actually came up with the entire second floor as housing. We're not looking to make this we're a nonprofit, and that's the way that's gonna remain. We are also, it's very important, and we're very proud of the fact that we are in absolute concert with Harwich Conservation Trust. You talk about odd bedfellows, but it's worked, and they support us and we support them. So that global vision is, when this is done, this is gonna be a really special thing that connects Harwich Center and Harwich Port. It's gonna be really nice. But going back to the fact with the housing, we also need to have a price point where we can sustain the building. We have to be able to do that.
Right.
So that's
That's the reason for the market
further
base.
discussion, we may have, and I don't know how far we get, if we could make all three affordable, we would, but we have to be able to pay to keep it there. So, we've spoken informally. Brendan's been good to come down and actually saw what we're doing there. Seeing is believing. But I think even at market price, the prices for the additional one-bedroom and the additional two-bedroom aren't hugely inflated from the, affordable.
Right.
So just want to be clear, we're not looking to get rich on this. We're looking to just maintain.
No, and that's
And-
clear.
and I would also say that, we're kind of, it's what we do, we're mission orientated. So, we got the okay to go on this July 1st, and the only reason we're kind of slowed down is we ran out of money. So, we got a lot done on the property. The building, I think, really looks nice on the outside, and that's all with the Historic Commission's blessing, because we asked to make that historic.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite there yet. They thought it was a good idea. So everything we've seen there is done with the blessing of the planning board, the building inspector, building commissioner, and historic. So I think this is a really great project, but we want to keep going.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Just one last comment, I'll turn it over. I'll point to you, Bob, because you've been leading with Michael Locke some discussions on how we work together with conservation and housing. This is in fact a small example of that. So we'll take our passing it back when they come forward. But let's go ahead and we'll get this information to us. As I said, our next meeting's October 23rd. We'll need all this packet together. As you know, town policy in town, we need it, probably by the 20th. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but a week before.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, Claudia?
I guess just in the idea of thinking about kind of some of the things you sent, so if I don't know how the numbers work out, but are there any options for, making all three affordable and providing more financing and/or rental assistance? I'm just thinking of ways to be creative to claim as much as we can, but also be financially feasible.
Right.
So.
You have that. Something to look at, sure, certainly. Thank you, Claudia. Bob?
My wife never talks about building stuff, but every time she goes past your place, she comes home and says, "Oh my God, you should see this building." So that's a credit to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan?
Yeah, it is impressive. Just even being invited to do a walkthrough inside, it's amazing all the space that's in there, and getting 3 units upstairs is exciting. I think what we have here is unique. We've had a lot of developers come to us, never for an ask, but no one has a permit or a special permit in place. No one has already done the work. It seems like you're often running with CPC funds. It seems like hopefully you'll get more money to continue that as well. So I think it's we always want a developer who can perform, and you've done that. So we definitely would like to be involved, so. I would.
Thank you. Brent and Mary?
I had the pleasure of a tour as well a couple of weeks ago, and I just reiterate what my brother here said. It's just impressive what you guys have done in so little time. And if there was any way we could do that before the 23rd of October, I'd be happy to come to another meeting, other than I'm gone for 2 weeks. But the four of you could certainly vote it without me. If we get that form approved in a week, I wouldn't object if I was still here to having an extra meeting.
Plus, that application will give you a sense of what you're asking for, you know, so I think go through that process. We'll need a process for everything that we do. But, yeah, we're excited.
And we've asked to keep that process simple, not to make it overcomplicated.
Thank you.
Thank you, yep,
So as soon as we have it, you'll have it.
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay?
Thanks.
Excellent.
Oh, thank
Thanks for
you.
listening.
Yep, thank you.
Great to see you both.
Next on the agenda is the discussion of the draft RFP for the Marsland property. And Laura, if you can, thank you for giving us a little time to get this item out of the way. But
No worries.
Is your office on the Cape?
My office is in Boston, but I live on the Cape,
Oh,
so
okay,
I'm just remote, I'm remote a couple days a week.
great, great. Thanks for.
that
being
makes
here.
you feel less guilty then.
Well, it is a cold, rainy day, you know. It was hard.
Okay, I'll share, I'll accept some guilt for having you come
There
out
you
here
go.
then.
I wouldn't want you to get off scot-free.
You want to start by introducing yourself and your organization, and we'll just jump right into the,
Sounds
they
good.
all have a copy of the draft, so it's,
Terrific. So, as Larry just said, I'm Laura Schufelt. I'm the Director of Community Assistance at Massachusetts Housing Partnership Fund, mostly referred to as MHP. MHP is a quasi-state agency. We are self-funded. Our main business is financing affordable rental developments with first mortgage. So we don't do the construction loan. We come in when it's all packaged and ready for us to put the first mortgage on. We also have the Center for Housing Data, which compiles data for housing-related items, and also packages it in a way where it's user-friendly for communities. They have a Datatown website where you can look at demographics and compare yourselves to other communities, but also it has, quick, easy to find, easy to understand graphics that you can download that shows your population increase or decrease, school population, if that's an issue, incomes, lots of those kinds of things. So it's a good website, very good when you're trying to make a presentation and pulling up where you stand with surrounding neighborhoods or even just yourselves. And then we have the most affordable first-time homebuyer program called the One Mortgage. And that's one that we administer, but local banks issue. So that's, and then my team, which is the community assistance team, we're the outward-facing team, and we help communities develop affordable housing, strategize for affordable housing, and educate communities and housing authorities on affordable housing. We do a lot of trainings. We have a 2-day housing institute in June, and my main focus is on helping communities and housing authorities develop affordable housing on town-owned land by disposing of it to a developer, in most cases, either by selling or leasing the land long-term. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a Cape Cod native. I was born in Hyannis, and I've lived here my whole life except for college and a stint in the Caribbean for a while. one of those things. Um, And I've been doing affordable housing on the Cape for about 35 years, so.
Rookie.
A rookie, yes. I had a couple of careers before this. So that's where I come from, that's who MHP is, and I've worked with Harwich in a couple of different iterations before I was at MHP. Right before I was at MHP, I worked at Falmouth Housing Authority for Bob Murray, and doing development I did develop all over the Cape, but I worked for Bob doing it. So that's where I am.
Okay. Laura, if you can, could you just hit some of the highlights of the description? You recommended some number of bedroom units we could have, and I know one question came up with why were we restricted to those, and I know someone asked me that, and my first response to them was, well, must be due to wastewater. And you came back with that, but you can get into more detail, but.
Sure.
And then some of the general themes that you presented in that, then we can go through and ask questions.
Yeah, I thought it would be a good idea just to get something on paper, based on my other projects on the Cape, some of the high points. You may have different ideas, that's great. I'd rather put it down and edit it than be talking in circles before we get something in writing. So the 90 bedrooms, Title V has cliffs rather than a smooth transition from what you can do with a Title V system, with an innovative, I can't think of it, IA system, I can't think of it.
Innovative alternatives.
Alternative, thank you.
But it's the same, it doesn't matter whether it's IA or septic, it's 90, the
90,
restriction's
right.
the same.
Right. The cliff is 90 bedrooms. 90 bedrooms, at 90 bedrooms, 91 bedrooms, you have to get a wastewater treatment plant and a groundwater discharge permit, DEP. So you go from about a $750,000 project, system to a $2 million and at least a year, getting the permit project. That's not undoable. Anyone who reads local news might have heard last week that Wellfleet approved a wastewater treatment plant. That was a project that I helped them with for 46 units, at 90 bedrooms. But they also pulled in a school, their fire department, and their police department, so that one treatment plant is gonna serve a multitude of
Right.
purposes. After they decided to go with the wastewater treatment plant, they'd already done a lot of community engagement around the 90 bedrooms, and they decided to keep it at 90 bedrooms rather than expand the housing. It was a well-designed plan for that land, and it didn't make sense to increase the land. It was a good capacity for the land. So you can do it, they did it, and there are MassWorks, or now I think they'll probably be called Housing Works grants, that's for infrastructure from the state that could help with the wastewater treatment plant. And that is, the town applies for it, and then it can get assigned to a project, either private or public. And those, under MassWorks, those have worked for bringing water to the site or redundant water, sidewalks, any kinds of infrastructure. Wastewater is what we usually use it for on the Cape. And they may pay a portion of it or all of it.
Laura, are those competitive grants, Mass?
Yes, they're competitive. But now that because housing is now a secretariat, they used to share
Right.
the MassWorks between housing and everything else municipal. Because housing's now a secretariat, they've split off a chunk of it just for housing.
Okay.
So that's a possibility, and then you could do more. But again, it depends how the trust wants to move forward with it. Otherwise, it's 90 bedrooms. Obviously, you have a lot of land there. With a wastewater treatment plant, you could do a lot more, but you also have a lot of undisturbed land.
Yeah, I think that's the discussion we get into, because it could be that, you know, in the range you're talking 45 units, 1, 2, 3 bed units. And put in, along with open space and the things that we're looking for, that may be a good target anyway. I don't know.
Right.
We can,
Right.
that's
So
that's the discussion point, though.
Right, that's a discussion point, and that's why I highlighted it
Eric?
on here, because there is the possibility to do something.
Excuse me, Laura, Mary had a.
I was just gonna say, and I don't think we wanna get into a separate wastewater plant for this development, knowing what the town's going through with wastewater. That sounds like competing with ourselves.
Well, that's a factual statement. It wouldn't be the first time, but it's a factual statement, which I agree, we don't want to do that. I guess my point was, if keeping with the feedback we're getting from Harwich, I think is residents, is protection of open space and the recreational areas for kids that we talked about in 46 units. It's pretty positive anyway, without getting into the discussion on wastewater. But nevertheless, I'm glad you brought that up, Laura, and explained it.
It is a discussion point, decision-making point. The next decision, which, again, these are things that you can discuss and don't have to be made right away, is whether you sell the land or enter into a long-term lease. In, kind of under the eyes of the law, a long-term lease, and we're talking 99 years, is a conveyance. It's still a disposition. Some communities like thinking that there's some control over what happens if they lease it. There isn't a lot, because the control is limited, so that it doesn't get tipped to a public construction and public construction, which would add about 40% to the cost and make it infeasible. So your lease and your disposition agreement and your lease have to be some control, whether it's a sale or a lease, but not, you couldn't have, you couldn't do anything more than what you do on a private development. So obviously the Board of Health has their rules, the building commissioner has their rules, but you couldn't come in and say, hey, this place is, you really need to mow this a little bit more. Those kinds of things you couldn't do. You couldn't get a list of the tenants, that's kind of some of the drawbacks. But people have that, communities and trusts have that conversation about, should we sell it or should we lease it? And that's, I can give you more pros and cons of either if you want to get into that discussion.
I think we will. Let's come back to it. Well,
Okay.
we can handle it now. Go ahead, Bob and then Mary.
Laura, if we were thinking about doing some kind of a partnership with the Harwich Conservation Trust as a hypothetical on this piece of land to develop the passive recreational potential of the land and the built, not being a part of the buildings, is there an advantage to a sale versus a lease in that?
It probably it might make more sense to lease it if you were going to go into a partnership with the Conservation Trust for the remaining land. Either a sale, then you're looking at septic on whatever the underlying leftover land is. And so that may be confining, that may be a little bit more confining. I think probably that would me to say that a lease is probably a better way to go if you were going to do something with the rest of the land with conservation.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, which do you recommend? My gut is, we don't want to be in the business of owning land once it's developed. But what do you think is best for the town?
It's different in different towns and different, so it's hard for me to say for Harwich. You don't, as the developer pays taxes on the property, the land doesn't have a separate, you're not paying taxes. The developer takes all the responsibility for any accidents or fires or anything, all the insurance is taken care of, you don't have any responsibility there. All that's worked out in the lease, so, those kinds of concerns really are taken care of in the lease. So, I think that if you were going to do some of, have a partnership with the Conservation Trust, probably leasing the land, but it may be that there's enough land there that you could subdivide it off and it wouldn't make a difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me go at the question a little bit differently, because I don't want to talk about Conservation Trust right now while we do the RFP. I think that's a discussion we come back to probably. But from a developer standpoint, if we go out with an RFP, we have land that I don't know what the value is, but we spent like around $800,000 to buy a property. Does that then, and then we lease it for 99 years, so that turns over, so the developer has to make money on building the houses, right? And then through rents or whatever. I see that towns seem to go that way with leasing the developer. What's your sense? Do the developers see that as a good, we'll get good response to an RFP that says, we'll give you the land, but then you take over for 99 years. To get at Mary's point, we're not in the land management business, so.
Yeah, it's, to a developer, it's the same thing, it's the same thing. Usually the publicly owned land is given to the, there's not a cost, or there's a minimal cost. Usually there's an upfront cost it can be in the RFP saying that, to pay back the town for the services, or the trust for the engineering and the pre-development X amount of dollars. But then usually it's given at a nominal fee. The same with a lease, where there would be an upfront first year lump sum to reimburse for, time and third party. And then it's just nominal going forward.
And I'm actually going to backtrack on my comment, Bob, here in a second. I'm not that consistent. But my question, back to the developer, if we go that right in a long-term lease, how do we, does the contract, whatever the instrument is, we work out, to lease it to developer, does that contain his requirements? He has to manage the property, he has to maintain it to,
Yes.
our expectations, wherever they are, that it's, you say we can't tell him to mow the yard, but he has to keep up appearances, he can't, he has to rent it equitably to different diverse population, so on. So we do have some control on that, the way it's written.
Right, yes, in the lease, usually more specifically in the permitting. That's usually where it gets all that, so that could be either a sale or a
Okay.
lease.
So we turn it over, we still have some control. Now, getting back, I told Bob, and I backtrack already, Bob, I'm not that consistent, my problem.
Worried about it.
If we were to, well, let me say it more positive. If we write an RFP with a developer and suggest, or whatever the terminology is, that possibly the developer could partner with the Harwich Conservation Trust as another way to raise funds, quite frankly, to control some of the open space. Is that something that would go out in the RFP per se, or is that after the fact you would talk to the developer, if we wanted to open those channels up?
Is the Conservation Trust a nonprofit?
It's a
or
nonprofit, but
Is it,
Bob knows more than I do, but I'm sure it's a nonprofit.
is it?
It is.
So it's a private nonprofit, it's not a public nonprofit?
It's a
Correct.
private nonprofit, I believe.
Okay. There would just be issues if it was, any kind of public nonprofit, because then you would get into the public.
Right.
Because the ground lease is done after the RFP is awarded. That happens later.
The ground lease happens at construction loan closing.
Yeah.
So-
Between the
It doesn't
award,
happen right away. There's a gap between the RFP being awarded and then creating the ground lease.
Okay, so we could come back to that discussion if we wish to.
and just to be clear, between the award and the construction loan, you have what's called a land disposition agreement or a land development agreement. It's LDA either way. And that lays out all the things the developer has to do before you give them a lease or sell them the land. And so it's, you have to get all your permits, you have to get all your funding commitments, all those kinds of things. So you have a legal document in between the award and
Yeah.
the final document.
But wouldn't we be wise, maybe in that section where you showed highly advantageous, to put something there so at least the developer knows we're gonna look most favorably if they'll work with the Harwich Conservation Trust? Would that be appropriate?
We're just creating open space, like what are we looking for? We're looking for conservation, open
Yeah,
space?
I think
Or are we
we-
looking for more, like,
Yeah.
instead of 20-foot setbacks, do we want 50-foot setbacks all around the property? It's big enough to do that,
Right.
to do from 20, so you can,
My guess is that we might want to make it so specific, say Harwich Conservation Trust, more, I don't know, open space and, leave the window open, but,
Right, and you can put that in your requirements in your submission to show that this has to have, you can say it has to have so much borders, or so much percentage open space, and that you can do. All right, the next thing.
go ahead, you're doing great.
The next thing that probably comes up is under the development objectives, and these are all ones that I just,
What
No,
page are you on?
of course, I didn't have this paged, I don't
And
think.
of course,
It's
I
section
have used
4.
my words, I can't get it on my laptop
Yeah.
right now, so.
Yeah, it's on about the 5th page,
The
I
fifth
think.
page?
Yeah, 5th page, sorry, I usually number the pages for this very reason. So down on the second paragraph, we already talked about the 90 bedrooms. Oh, yeah, after that, it says the development should be designed for a variety of households, individuals of all ages, families with children, persons with disabilities, and reflect a mix of affordability levels. Okay?
At what point would we make a statement about how many units would have to be handicap accessible?
You can say it in this development objectives. The Massachusetts Accessibility Board says 5% have to be. If you wanted more than that, you can put in there. You can also, I think I did put in universal design somewhere.
Did somewhere.
I did, but
Yeah.
universal design, it comes in later, so that it could be adapted to fully handicap accessible
Okay.
if needed.
and that's something that would be presented from the developer. They would know they couldn't get around that, just like health issues, conservation issues.
ABA, yes.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
5%, yes, that's,
Mhm.
architects have to sign off on
Yeah,
everything.
So that's gonna already be in there as.
That's
a-
gonna be in there, so it's
Thank you.
only if you want
Mandatory.
something more.
Okay,
The next thing is the mix of residential building types. That can either be something you want or don't care about. Again, it's very broad, because you can't be prescriptive, to say, we want it to look we wanted, I always use I had one, group once that said they wanted single-family homes with wraparound porches and stone fireplaces. And I'm like, you're not gonna get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, me too. My dream house. So you can say, you know, we want it to look like it belongs in Harwich, we want a Cape Cod style, all those things make sense. We did some design guidelines for the Wellfleet project. And if you know Wellfleet at all, they have a mix of very historic sea captainy kind of houses, and then they also have like contemporary slant roof, little, you know, and they wanted their design guidelines to reflect both those kind of, either or both of those kinds of designs. So we can be very loose or we can get a little bit tighter in some guidelines for design. But as we move on, I'll show you, I'll send you what was said in RFPs and then what the resulting proposals were for a couple of projects. I'll keep to the ones on the Cape because that makes
I don't know
more
about
sense.
everyone else, but I like it vague or loose, so it gives developers a chance
The
to come
creativity
in
for
with
architects.
creativity for 1, 2, 3 bedrooms and.
Yep. Okay, and then you leave the bedroom mix up to the developer because that's all about funding. And that changes. So what you do today, in 3 years, could be way different, so. And then I talked about the land development agreement, and then affordability. I just did this one off of one that I had done before, so all the units must be affordable to households at or below 80%, and preference for a range of incomes between 30 and 80%. Again, this is a discussion for the trust. I put this in there this way.
Yeah.
For the most part, the only way these projects get funded is with low-income housing tax credits. And the tax credit limit is 60% AMI, area median income. What can happen is that a high percentage can be tax credit units, and then it can be some that are above that, either market 80% or, you know, something in between. But because the tax credits subsidize about, you know, most, well, not all of, about 75% of the cost of the unit, you know, developers lean towards that.
60%'s the number, it seems, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, you can either say you want it to be all tax credit, or say you want, you know, a range.
Mhm.
Either way.
Yeah, I need some more discussion on that, Laura, so I
Yeah.
understand it, because of we've been talking less than 80%, you know, as a standard, but the tax credit is 60%. But is the implication that we could go, some units could go higher than 80% if the average were 80%? Is that what you're saying? Because if I read
So you can have some of them go up to 80% if the average is 60%. So if you have some at 30%, which is,
to get that, okay,
you can get that average, you know, they offset each other
all
to
right.
get it to 60.
And if we're above 60 and below 80, does that mean the developer has to get funds from not using tax credits, so we have to find additional funds from, or it doesn't happen at all?
No, they would there's not enough other subsidy funds to finance one of these projects. They have to
Okay.
get tax credits
So,
if they're
so
this size.
the tax credit's the bottom line, then, they have to get that to make it work.
That's it. And if you say from 30 to 80, then you can maybe get some income averaging and get
Get
some
to
80s.
60, okay.
And
But the
average
key is,
60s.
the key has got to average 60%,
Yeah.
whatever you say.
Yeah,
Okay, and that's how it'll be stated in the RFP, so they will abide by that?
nope, I would leave it up to them.
Okay,
If they can find a different way to fund it, in
So be
the
it.
criteria that you want, then more power to them.
Okay, good. Anything else on this point? This has been a
We had
discussion.
talked about CPC funds, making it possible to go up to 100%. But if we're taking this approach with tax credits, that's out of the game.
I think that's what you're saying.
You may be able to do that, to say to, you know, that you could say a range up to 100%. The reality is that 100% rents are higher than market. So, the funding sources will only let you go to market. So they'll reduce it. So it happened in the Eastham project. They thought they were gonna get 120% rents. And then when the market study was done, the market rents were 90%. So now they have 90% units and not 120% units. In the Wellfleet project, the developer, who are both not, it's co-developers, they're both nonprofits, knew about that kind of twist. And so they have some unrestricted units, but they have them priced, and they've committed to pricing them below market. But then folks then that are making 100% can afford them. So there's a couple of different ways to do it, but that's up to developers. Your job is to say what range you want.
Okay.
And then they can figure out whether they can fund it under that.
Yeah, because when you get to 100% AMI, the rates that came out for this year, just to get a sense, for a one-bedroom is $2,158. So that seems like that's what I've been hearing for rentals, $1,800 to $2,200 for a one-bedroom. So that's where the 100% is getting almost close to market. So it depends on who we're looking to help here. So the 80% AMI is someone who makes $64,480, and that rent's gonna be $1,727. That's just for one person, one bedroom. You know, I mean, or of course, a family is completely different. But then when you drop down to 60, it drops dramatically to 48. So how do we get more of that? Because we get closer to what you're really pushing, right?
If we
Everyone's
make
thinking, let's
sense.
get to 120, but we don't have to get that, we don't have to go that high to get to the idea of like, we're almost getting close to market rate. If we try to get more 80% out of this, I think that's a really good place to be.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be some 30% to offset it, and you fall within that 60, that's maybe the game we wanna play. But I think we're gonna be helping exactly who
Right.
you're looking
Yeah.
to strive for.
No, I agree.
Mhm.
So my last question is, Laura, smile when I ask you this. What's the language we put in the RFP to get there? Is that what,
I would say, when you get to the criteria, which is the attachment A, I would say all of the units below market with incomes up to 100% AMI, or something like that.
okay. Well, I mean, I'm comfortable with, Laura, I mean, Brendan, you know more than I do on this, but
Yeah.
using whatever language you put in to get us to where we get the
Yeah.
tax credits, we get to the end point that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, the goal is to
Anyone?
make it attractive to all
To do-
developers, so we're not gonna put
Right.
crazy restrictions
Right.
on it.
Right.
Oh, that's the whole deal, is make it creative, give them the
They're gonna come up
opportunity.
with the numbers that work, but most of it's gonna fall at that 60% because of the credits.
Okay. Are we okay on this one?
Yeah.
Okay, unit types, I actually had that highlighted for the housing production plan, because I didn't know whether you had a current one. I knew Jen Golson was working on it. I thought she was working on it.
It's being updated, and Mary, I don't know if we have an update on the housing production plan.
I did not get a hold of Joyce, but I will.
They're
get a
working
hold.
on it, so
Okay.
we're
well,
hoping to get it,
Yeah.
it-
Okay.
I'm gonna leave it there, but,
And then, whether you want more than one building, you can do it all in one building. If you want more than one building, you need to say so in here, or else you'll get one building.
No, I think multiple buildings would be my
Yeah,
preference
I
on
do
that.
too.
And universally accessible, at least 10% of the units have to contain 3 or more bedrooms, that's a state
Yep, makes sense.
requirement. And then on the next page, I think it's page 6, which is still under 4, building design and aesthetics. Encourage the following, I highlighted all of these: multiple buildings which can be of various sizes, native landscaping in keeping with Harwich's character, outdoor common and recreation areas, ample storage, bicycle storage, on-site laundry facilities, scattered parking as much as possible, areas for outdoor trash and recycling, and sensitivity to neighborhood and adjacent properties.
I would argue with any of those.
Right. The
Yeah.
the only thing I wondered if we should add there, and maybe we don't need it, multiple buildings of various sizes that blend with the community. I mean, I think we want things that look like they fit in.
Okay. I assume this will be permitted using Chapter 40B?
I mean, always hopefully a very friendly 40B, but I
But
think,
40B, that's
But-
a good use of 40B.
Yeah.
I
Or-
recommend it.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I just want, can we talk about energy efficiency for a minute?
Oh, yeah,
Um,
sure.
My concern would be that we have, if we're having multiple buildings, that they all be situated so that they are the greatest advantage for,
passive
Solar.
energy.
Passive solar?
Yeah.
Yep.
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 and you use the LEED or other energy efficient standards. Is that equivalent to net zero?
No, net zero is net zero, so that is a little bit hard, that's harder to
It's harder to
to
get to.
reach to.
Yeah.
What we usually say is that they have to meet the standards, but it's so expensive to actually get certified that we don't ask, we make them certifiable, which,
Okay.
but net zero is, I guess if you had like two 24 unit buildings, you could get to net zero. So we can put that as a,
I'd
highly
rather
advantageous.
not, my position, I'd rather not, because I want to be sure so we can afford to go forward. And Leeds gets us close to that, doesn't it? May not be net zero, but I
I
think.
mean, but keep in mind with the new stretch code in Harwich, I mean,
The new-
the stretch
The
code.
stretch
So you
code.
have the code, then every town.
We follow the stretch code in
We
Harwich, so
follow the
we're,
stretch code, so
so we're-
building new, they're gonna have to comply. These units can be very
they'll be,
energy efficient, and then with Mass Save stepping in, I'm sure they're gonna get some dollars making it all electric with heat pump technology and everything else.
Yeah.
So what I've been seeing every time we've been pricing out a job, we're going to all electric because of the savings you get from Mass Save. I don't know what they're gonna do on a big development if Mass Save gets involved in that, but with the stretch code, you're gonna get very close to.
we're gonna get, that's
most-
my
yeah.
view, we're gonna get close to it, and
And the R ratings are through the roof in a way.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of these are solar as well.
Good.
So we'll definitely cite it for solar, and there's rebates for multifamily, so it makes sense. And there's rebates for all electric. The, what's called the qualified allocation plan, which is how the state allocates their subsidy funds. You pretty much have to do all electric or you don't get any,
yeah.
so.
When the pro forma comes in from the developer, you're gonna see where they're getting their money, is some coming from CPC, you'll see Mass Save dollars, you'll see every spot where they're getting their dollars to hit their budget, or to create it, so.
Okay, so that was energy efficiency. The submission requirements are pretty standard. I can go over them if you want, but they're what you need to, all the things you need to have in order to make an informed decision. and including the developer's experience. I guess I will say one thing, because the state ruled a few years ago, Inspector General, I think it was, ruled that everything that's in a proposal is public. We now don't ask for actual business financials. We used to be able to keep them separate. You can't anymore. So we ask for bank references,
Yeah.
financial references, and then don't only ask for them, but actually call them. And that's usually fine to, you know, you call their lenders, and that's a little different than some people think it's going to be. So we asked for their concept as a narrative and also in a preliminary site design, showing access of and also the properties that surround it. Talk about the architectural character. You'll get conceptual design drawings. I asked for a color rendering because some people can't
Visualize, huh?
look at 2D and see what it's gonna look like, so I make sure that we get at least a color rendering. Sometimes we get more than one. Management plan, a lot of times at this early stage, unless the developer has a management company subsidiary, they'll just say how they're going to hire a management company if they don't actually have one, which is fine. But the developer has to have a clear understanding of fair housing and has to make those statements. All of the units, all the affordable units have to be, marketed and fair and open. They have to be awarded by a lottery. The town can request local preference, which would be a maximum of 70% on the first initial lease-up, and then it goes away. The wait list is made up of the combined open pool. Anyone who's in the local pool also goes in the open pool, so they have 2 chances to get a unit. Those are just questions that always come up, so I thought I'd just be clear on that. I had the development should be completed within 3 years of the execution of the land development agreement, so 3 years of kind of award. They should have it done. And that may get extended. Most projects don't get funded the first time they apply for funding. But then they've been having mini rounds, and they'll take some of the ones that don't get funded, and they might get them the second time around, or the second time mini round, so 2.5 years. But without ARPA money, it might tighten up a little bit more than it has in the past. So just so you know, the timeline is long from now till then.
Right. If it gets longer, we don't start it, so we'll.
That's right. You have to take that first step, or you're never gonna get there. So for minimum standards to be scored, just they have to give you everything you asked for, and they should have a minimum of 5 years' experience in residential development, not necessarily affordable housing development. There's a lot of developers who are dipping their toe in, and they're making sure that they have a team that's experienced. And so the developer themselves may not have 5 years of affordable housing experience, but they have residential development experience, and they've brought on team members that, a development consultant that will do the pro forma, all those kinds of things. So that's just so that the door isn't always closed to new developers. We try and there's required forms about tax compliance and non-collusion and all kinds of things that are in there. And then there's a lot of legalese under submission terms and requirements that,
I didn't read all those, Laura Bell.
it just says, it's understood, we can say no to all of them, and
Right,
you
okay.
can't come back to us, and that we have no liability, and if we gave you wrong information, that's your fault for not checking it. That's pretty much what it says.
Thank you.
And then the selection process, there's usually it would be the trust that would be reviewing the decision, or you may add some other people, or you may just have a subcommittee, however you choose to do it. And then you go through and score them. Because the trust owns the land, the trust will be deciding who gets awarded. I don't think, I can't remember your bylaws. Do you have to go back to the select board?
We do not.
No, we don't.
No.
We do,
Okay,
no, we
I
don't.
didn't think you did. There's a couple that do. And then after you select the person, oh, and you don't have to select the person who scores the best if you think that another
Yeah.
one is a better,
Yeah.
better for the town. And you say that in here 100 times so that they can't say that, they can't sue you. Land development agreement and ground lease, we put templates in the RFP so they know basically what they're gonna look like. And I have those templates. And it's subject to Chapter 30B, that's the procurement law. It goes in the central register. All right, and then the criteria, you wanna do that now, you wanna?
I just have one question, backing up on the management. Are they required to have a manager on site?
So yes, if you require an office, so that's one thing to think about in amenities. I usually suggest that it's standard, but if you don't say it, you might not get it. A community room that has a kitchen, so you can have, so the residents can have gatherings. A management office, and then sometimes other gathering spaces if you want. But you can require that there be management on site, not 24/7, but a 24/7 emergency number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other
That's
view,
in the
I
ground
think that's
lease.
important to me, to have someone there.
Having the RFP beforehand?
You
as
have it
well?
in the RFP.
I don't know, I'd like to see that, because it's 90 units, that's a lot. It'd be
Right.
nice to have someone,
For about 45 units.
40
50 if
90
you do-
bedrooms,
yeah.
but, 45
50 if you
units.
do more one-bedrooms.
What do you think?
And do you see developers that have 40 units needing an on-site manager?
Yes, I usually share their time, because
Okay.
70 units is about what one manager.
So you wouldn't have to have someone actually there, but you'd have to have someone available.
Yeah, there's an office, there's some
Is an
Office
office,
structure for
somebody's
it.
there, but not
Okay.
full-time.
Yep, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. just
Okay,
make sure we're on
that
the same
works.
page. Yep.
That works.
And a maintenance person is usually there
Yeah.
full-time for
Mhm.
40 units.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
So it's usually two. So you have to have room for storage for maintenance.
Okay.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. We can go through the criteria, or if you want to just take a pause and we'll finish the narrative, I can update the narrative, or we can keep going.
Why don't we finish the narrative while we're on it, and then we'll go to the criteria.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think we're getting close to the end of the,
I mean, you've made this an easy discussion, Laura. Thank you very much.
yeah, I think we did the selection process, and we did the post-selection land development agreement, ground lease if you have one, or if you don't have a ground lease, then you have a purchase and sales agreement, which can have all the same conditions in it. And 30B. So the next would be the criteria, but I'm not sure we want to go there yet. It's up to you guys, whether you want to the comparative criteria is how you score it. And we can wait on the scoring till we get the rest of it up to speed, or,
What's your, I think the criteria is less interesting to me, and be sure we have everything in place on the
on the narrative.
so
Yep.
we can move on the RFP as quickly as we can.
Right, so then we can do the comparative based on the changes that we make in the narrative.
Okay, is that,
Does that
We
make-
don't have to have that before we move on the RFP, the criteria.
You do.
Oh, you do?
we do, okay.
Yeah, we have to get everything together. I will tell you that, just to give you an
Well-
update, there's a couple of things that, as far as attachments that you don't have done yet. And one of them is to identify the developable area where you want it to be developed. I have a proposal from my house engineers to look at that, to give you, like a 10-acre.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And then best access, and then also do a little bit of a due diligence narrative, which is usually what I put in with the RFP, so that it talks about, it won't talk about zoning and utilities, because I think we know that. We have a survey that gives us the utilities. Zoning, we know it's pretty much gonna be 40B, but it gives any other constraints, and it'll look at everything else that's been done and put it in a narrative form.
Wow.
And it's small dollars, and I pay for that. So it's,
So,
Mary?
sort of related to that, now that you're talking about parceling out some portion of this property, I was wondering if it was appropriate in this RFP to talk about taking a small area, an acre or two, and having it be a 40Y where you can put 4 starter homes on an acre? Or should that be its own separate RFP? And I don't even know if my brothers and sisters want to do that, but it was just an idea.
So I could jump in real quickly.
Yeah.
So there's the one parcel that's way off with the one in the middle for eminent domain. And if we were to get those two, we could just drop the one on the right and not even have this included in that, because it's, it's not connected to the other parcels. So there's an idea to
Yeah.
maybe go along with that. You'd have 2 acres of the eminent domain, and whatever the other, I think the other one might be a little bit more over an acre. But that could be something that
That
could
could
be
be
developed
separate.
later.
Okay.
So we can not even include that parcel or the eminent domain, which, we don't own yet. So we can just take that off completely, and maybe we're offering, 10.5 acres or something.
Maybe, yeah.
Something to think about.
I just want anything to hold this up at the moment.
Well,
Yeah.
the other thing I wondered is there any advantage to the developer in having that as a possibility? No, just a complication?
it's a complication, and there's no subsidy for it, so.
Okay, enough. I
Yeah.
like Brendan's idea.
Yeah, let's keep it simple at the moment
Yeah.
then, so we move
And that
ahead.
just popped in my head. I don't know if that's even possible, because then we have, the property was sold as one piece, so the deed and everything else. So
Yeah.
it could
Yeah.
create another problem.
Let me,
It could be subdivided during the permitting at 40B,
Okay.
so
There we go, great.
Okay.
you can divide it up any way you want to.
Okay,
So we're gonna have the engineers look at what is
Yeah,
needed for
please.
90 bedrooms,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
or that just kept as open space,
and the rest can be open
and that could be
space.
walking trails or what have you. So there's,
and
Options.
Claudia, you had a question, comment?
I think when I looked at it, when we walked it a couple years ago, there was talk about potentially putting like a veterans, dedicated house or,
that was if we were gonna separate it out. And I
Okay.
think at that point, we were looking to do too much work as the trust,
got it.
because we
Okay.
we were looking to do everything ourselves and
Yeah.
potentially
There was a
build.
lot
And
thrown around that day.
not saying we
Okay.
lost our way, but we were gonna divide up something for this group, that group, and we were
Right.
just kind of finding a way to figure out what to do with the land once we got it.
Okay,
I think those are just ideas we had.
okay, great, thanks.
One thing that-
Let me come back, just be sure we're all on the same page. We had a discussion about sale versus lease. Are we all in agreement to lease?
I'm on the fence, but if the 4 of you think that's the way to go.
It is certainly for me to use
Yeah, based
developer
on
to
the
do that.
comment you had working with the
Yeah.
Conservation Trust, if that makes it easier and going forward, it seems like that would be, to our point, trying to work
'Cause
together
that-
with
that-
other groups.
Because that brings us something in hand for the developers to work on, rather than have to go through the sale and then and all that.
And it's not a negative to the developer to have
Not
to
at
do
all.
it with a lease.
No,
That was my concern.
it's not.
Okay, all right, then I'm
You
good.
okay
It's
with
good for
it?
the town, for the residents to hear that we are keeping it, we're not just giving it away.
They-
Is it one of,
Very, yeah,
It's usually the preferred way for,
yeah,
Okay.
because we don't, especially on the Cape, we don't have a lot of ground leases. And so we don't have a lot that, that they have experienced, but they consider a sale gone and a lease still ours. And it is.
yeah.
You know.
Okay,
And
okay,
at the end of 99 years, the developer can either remove the housing or give it to the trust.
Yeah.
If it's still there.
okay.
you'll
It'd be
handle
a
that,
gift
Larry,
for
right?
someone
You
in
okay?
100 years from us.
You'll handle that in 99 years, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll leave a recorded message for you all at that time. So,
Okay?
criteria then, do we have to, should we,
No, I think that I'll update the
and then we'll go through the
narrative.
criteria?
I'll update the criteria and send both of them to you so that it'll reflect what we've just talked about.
Okay, fantastic.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does.
All right.
And when do you think that the engineering team would come out to look at the property, to look at the development?
Soon.
Okay.
I haven't signed the proposal yet because I wanted to talk to you first, but, yeah, it'll be in the next couple weeks.
Okay,
They'll have it, should have it, everything to us within a month anyway.
That's great.
okay.
And I gather you're willing to come back if it's not raining?
Yeah, Monday, I can come back. Monday's not my Boston day.
Okay, good.
This has been so incredibly helpful.
Well, after some years, we're actually moving ahead now, so I can't, we're excited as a group.
Yeah, I'm excited to help you move
Okay.
forward, so.
That's great.
Great.
Thanks for having me, and I'll get these to you as soon as I can.
Okay,
The only other question I had, you had a lot of places where you showed dates.
Yeah.
And I assume once we know when we're ready to put it out, you have standard intervals that you would plug
Yes,
in? Okay.
I should say that just so you don't think that this is a quick process.
Right.
The RFP under 30B has to be out for 30 days, but because you're asking for plans and,
Yeah,
and that, it's usually 8 weeks, 8 to 9 weeks.
Okay.
yeah, that's what.
So,
okay.
just so
All
you
right,
know.
good.
But it all starts when we tell you we're ready to send it out, whatever date.
Right, then we make a final copy that's all one document, and you have to put it in the central register. And you have to advertise it in a local paper twice.
Okay.
And, then you have a site visit, and then you have it come back, like I said, it's usually 8 to 9 weeks. And you have to kind of, look at the schedule for, the state's funding and make sure you're not, competing with developers trying to get applications in for that. So, I know all those dates will
Yeah.
thread the needle, so they'll have time to do it.
And procurement officer, when does he put his eyes on it? After you're done with it, or?
Yeah, usually after I'm done with it, I mean,
Okay, good question.
uh,
Before you leave, Brianna, do you have any comments, questions you wish to,
Not at the moment, no,
okay,
but I'm here to help in any way,
all right. Thank you.
okay,
Laura,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura.
you're welcome.
have a safe trip back all the way to Hyannis. Hey, for me, that's a major trip. Moving on in the agenda then, we have a deadline by October 2nd to submit our application for CPC funding. And the first applicant, we worked on this, and the first one is for basically a repeat from what we asked for last year. Changed the narrative some, and I've added, and we'll add additional documents to support it, because that was one of the concerns they had before, that they didn't have background information. And so if you agree with this, we'll take a vote. It would be our request for $500,000 to move into the Housing Trust Fund.
So moved.
The only thing I would add, Larry, is under other parties the
Right.
trust has reached out to.
Yeah.
I'd list that September 27th presentation.
Yep,
I think
good point.
that's a,
Yeah, I listed those hoping I hadn't forgotten anything, but
yeah.
because I took the liberty to listen to Harwich Fire Association, for instance. Well, I'll do that, Mary.
Can I ask Brianna a question?
Sure.
So the 4.98%, why'd that lower from 5.4? Were there new homes that were built, or like, where'd that number
We-
come from?
We got that figure from Jen's information, Jen Goldson.
We had a discussion about that, and we decided to keep it consistent with the activity. We asked Jen
Action
to
plan.
change hers. We need to have it be the same between the plan that she's presented us.
The state has us at 5.4,
And I know that,
right?
well, I also know that there were a few that were pending to expire in, I think, June of this year.
Yeah,
So,
I tell you what we'll do on that is we'll clarify that.
yeah,
yeah.
I'll follow
And
up with them.
Our discussion was I want to be sure that it's consistent between this and our action plan.
Right.
But it should
But we,
coincide
Should be-
with the state,
Should
too.
be correct, but we'll,
Right. yeah,
Because your units are correct, the unit count,
okay,
but the
based on the-
percentage is,
the
Off.
percent.
yeah,
yeah,
right.
We don't want
Right,
to show
I'll
that
follow
we're
up with the-
losing
yeah. I'll follow up
traction
with
here,
them.
so.
All right.
Okay, we'll do that. Anything else? We have a motion. Bob, do we have a second?
Second,
Any other discussion? What we find out, Brianna and I did this a couple times because the way the website's set up, you go to the website, and I'm complaining here a bit, but you go to the website and there's no way to print it off. You submit it. And so I did it once thinking I'd print a copy of it and I lost it, so I had to redo it. And that's why I did it on this, to give you the narrative. Then what I'll do is, or one of us will do it, we'll go back into the site and type this in officially, and then you push the submit button. Apparently it's there, and I didn't want it to be there until we had discussed it and voted on it. That's why the funny presentation today, I guess. Any other discussion?
just that you know, all the applicant info has to change.
I already did that once, and then
That's
I
the
lost
one
it.
from before.
Oh, that's a good, I'm glad you brought that up, because the applicant information now is, I'm going to be the applicant, and I've asked Brendan as vice chair to be the alternate applicant, and so put those in there.
Good.
And
Yep.
that's right, I forgot, because I filled that out twice,
And went
and then
nowhere.
lost it.
Yeah.
So, one thing about how does this project benefit the citizens of Harwich? Should we add a couple more line items in there? Only because, being on the board for the last 4 years, CPC has always thought our application was very light. Not saying we gotta put, but it
I
wouldn't even hurt putting the draft RFP in there,
Yeah.
if
I-
that's something
Uh,
you'd like to do, just to show the progress on the Marceline property.
I'll certainly add the draft RFP, and if you can email me other suggestions for the narrative, I'll do that before I submit it.
Yeah, items that I may include would be, Jen Golson talked about the safe harbor.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Just making sure we could do friendly 40Bs. Having possession of the Marceline property allows us to do friendly 40Bs because we have control over the property, rather than a developer coming in, buying a piece of land and going a different way. So I thought that safe harbor resonates, so I think that would be important, like, why are we doing this? Yeah, we want to give affordable housing and essential benefits to residents, but I think putting that out there, our goal is to get year-round residents, be in the safe harbor, and have friendly 40Bs. And the only way to do that is to fund the trust.
Excellent. I love it. If you can email me any suggestions, have it, and I'll beef that up. Okay?
When does this have to be?
October 2nd, so I'm going to do it, if you can get it to me, this week.
Yeah, because CPC already started meeting, I believe,
I'm-
on applicants, so we're going to present pretty much this.
The only reason I asked was if there was some way to include the most recent draft of the action plan
I'll include that.
That's a
I,
great idea.
I'll-
Yeah,
It's just another piece of work.
I listed that as being available on the website. In this, I didn't print it out or do it that way, so I'm undecided. And I'll talk to Jan or Dave Nixon and figure out whether having it listed as available on the website is sufficient. But you're right, we need to put that in there.
Yeah,
I'd like to have them see a fat package.
that's a great idea.
yeah.
Okay, send me any of that, and I will, we have a motion in a second, if you'll let me move forward with the, with that motion, that's with suggested additions. That'd be acceptable?
So the motion is for both applications? to
No,
go?
just
talking
one.
the one.
Just talking one,
Okay,
we'll
all right,
go to the next one. They're two separate applications if we go that way.
very good.
All right?
Take a vote.
Yeah, please, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And give me that, we'll beef this up then, as you suggested. Now, the second one, we'll have more discussion, because I think, Bob, the meeting we were at, you were at personally, and I was at on Zoom. It was kind of interesting, because each town has been a little, sometimes creative in their, for affordable housing. And it occurred to me after, I'm not sure this came up in that meeting, but, one thing we could possibly do is look at renter assistance program. And I did find, as I gave you this, an example where Wellfleet's done that. It provided some assistance. And so I've given you some ideas on that. I'm open to any comments. I put a figure of 250, and Brianna has got this information for me on this as well. For discussion purposes, I put $250,000 ask, and then just, pull from the air some funds, some portion of that to manage it, because certainly we're not going to manage use, applications and the whole process. It'd have to be a part of that fund. But it appears that it might be, to me at least, it might be another way to help people who need housing and can't afford it, if we could do it for a 3-year period. So I throw that out there. Well, you've read my narrative, you know where we're coming with on this, but I don't want to do this if it jeopardizes our $500,000 ask. But we're in the housing assistance business, and so I'm open to comments, questions, discussion.
I had one.
Please.
I think this is a great idea. I love that you did that and you found Wellfleets. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It looks like you've got a lot of data there. I just wonder if we're better having our housing coordinator do this rather than spending another $50,000 on management. And if the housing coordinator does it instead of us, they don't have to stay below, help me, Brendan, with that AMI. We're below 80, but the housing coordinator or housing advocate can help anybody.
Right, with CPC funds, they can go up to 100%. And then also any
You
rent.
said it's
Yeah.
close to market now.
Yeah, and then any rental assistance, it would have to be an issue with the deed restriction, I believe, to even get it qualified for 80% AMI. So I think that this really could sit with, Wellfleet has it with their housing authority, but we have Brianna, if she's willing to do it, I think we can have her do that. I don't know if it's too late to submit, though. Is that
Pardon?
it would be too late to submit those CPC?
No, this would be CPC for October 2nd.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we agree to some fashion, I would make the pitch on October 2nd. Well, it has to be submitted by October 2nd. They've asked me to attend their next meeting, which is, I got my calendars later, it's like October 20th or something. And do both, do the, back up this submittal that we've given them by October 2nd. And they've asked me at the same time to review what we've done this past year, make an annual report. And so I'll do both of those, and hopefully I'll have company. But we'll do both of those at the same date, and I'll circulate that date. But the written application needs to be in by October 2nd, even though we won't be in front of them until afterwards.
I mean, Brian, do you have the capacity to take on a project like this or to run a program like this?
This is the exact type of thing that I would like to run and am fine with running. And I do have the capacity at the moment.
So who would apply for it? Brianna? And we don't apply for it.
If that's the way you went, it would be myself, and then Joe would be the second.
I would lean more towards that. And then you can actually run up to that 100%, and it can help more.
A broader range.
I think that's a better idea. You could support it.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, there's no ownership here. We're trying to get rental assistance out.
Yeah,
I think if we can, I think our action, if we did that, would be to vote with that, moving it to,
And the housing authority
and
has
let me
something-
finish,
sorry.
and then we can vote, well, we can vote to support it and move it on, so we have on record of supporting it
Yeah.
and then taking those actions. So
Great.
excuse me, Brandon, at the end, I still want to vote, so we officially take a step if that's people's desire.
Sure, yeah. Anything
Wait a
else?
minute, Brendan had a question.
I did a question, the housing authority, don't they have money for this, but they're having trouble dispersing it, and what's the problem there?
I think the problem is, and Elizabeth, I see is on there, but I think the problem is they can only assist with 300 a month,
Oh, 300.
which may not be enough to help some people.
300 what?
$300 towards
Oh.
their rent a month. But Elizabeth can correct me if I'm wrong.
I can. Hi, Elizabeth Harder, Chair of the Harwich Housing Authority. We have an agreement with Harwich now that allows us to give $300 a month for 3 years. We could sign another agreement to assist in this project at whatever levels Harwich would decide. It would be a new agreement. We can't change the $300 a month agreement until it ends, at which point that could also be changed. Does that make sense?
It does, but it still leaves the question, is there any reason we don't go ahead with having our application, through Brianna to move forward?
Not in my
No,
case.
Brianna should
Yeah.
go
So we can still,
forward.
thank you,
And
Elizabeth.
then we can determine whether we, if she'd like help. That's the way to do it.
Right, then we can work together if it's desired.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thanks. I've had enough discussions. Anyone care to motion? Our motion now is to support this concept and ask Brianna to be the project application and for Joe to be the,
So
we-
moved.
do we have a second? Then we'll have it on record that we support this idea and we've moved it there.
Second.
Any other discussion?
None.
Great idea.
Great.
Awesome.
Good. Hopefully we've done two things today that will
You
move
want
us
us to
forward.
vote on that, Larry?
Mary.
It's very hard when you're in that chair, which I know now. I'm always, did we vote? Did we not?
No, I'm trying so nice to be nice to you. Is all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Now, we do, to end the, just very quickly, we have the meeting on the
7th,
27th, and,
Wednesday.
Wednesday at 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
And we've got, I think, the email that you and I, we got 98
We've got 100.
people signed up.
Great.
And
Great.
Mike Locke sent me a note asking if I wanted to make welcoming comments. I asked Bob if you could do that because you spearheaded this with Michael as I want to give you credit for that and have to do the
I
welcoming.
don't need credit for that. I'd be more comfortable with you doing it.
Are you sure?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
I don't want to, because you did all the hard work. I always feel a little
Happy to
guilty
do
about
hard
that.
work
but,
any day.
Okay, so I'll make a few comments, but that's great. And our next meeting's on October 23rd.
Why is that?
And, well, we're doing once a month, but let me reiterate what Mary suggested early on. If we decide that we're willing to go on this RFP, I'll ask for another special meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And, because I think it's, we're gaining momentum now. I certainly don't want to stop it if we,
Right.
if she gets back in a week or so, we'll schedule. I'll
Okay.
send an email out and we'll schedule and work with Brown and we'll schedule another meeting.
Okay, great.
Anything else we need to discuss? Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second? Now, Mary, I'm going to ask for a vote this time. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Adjourned
you.
at 2:25.
2:25, all right.